Hello and welcome to another episode of Southern Shooters. My name's Stu. Today we're going to be looking at the basic principles of mounting a scope. The rifle we've got here today is a Thompson Dimension. Before we go any further, I already ensured that the rifle's safe by removing the bolt, the magazine and having a visual inspection. So let's get down to mounting our scope. Some makes of rifles will have a dovetail machined into the action. Some will also have holes drilled into the action which you then mount the bases to. This particular rifle has holes drilled into the action, which we then mount our bases to. Firstly, you may have some grub screws to remove in the holes. This particular model does. I've already removed 3. Now these grub screws stop any rubbish getting into the threads so you can mount your bases. Now that you have removed your grub screws, you may like to keep them, but it is unlikely that you'll actually use them again. Next, I'm going to grab my bases, put them on the rifle, ensuring that they're square, locating the holes. Now it's important that you do these screws up to the manufacturer's torque setting. Each manufacturer probably has a different torque setting, so try and find that. Now if the manufacturer doesn't have a torque setting, it's important that you do them up firm. Now that we have the bases secure and I've torqued them up, we're ready for our next step. We're going to grab our scope rings. And as you can see here, there's a cross bolt which goes under the slot on top of the base. Now dovetail scope rings will not have this cross bolt in it. Alright, now we're going to continue. We're going to put our scope ring onto our base. One critical thing is that you want to ensure that the scope ring is flat and square to the base. Ensure that the cross bolt is in the slot of the base. Next step, we want to do up our screws. Again, try and follow the manufacturer's torque setting, but if they don't give you a torque setting, just ensure that they're firm. Now that I have both scope rings mounted, I've torqued all the screws up, I've taken off the top half of the scope rings, it's now time to put our scope on. I'm going to place the scope on, we're going to ensure that it's even, square and flat. If it's rocking around, you may have to retrace your steps because something may be loose. Once you're happy, you can get your top half of your scope rings and place them on your scope. Now that we've loosely done up our screws, you can see the scope can still twist from side to side and front to back. Now I've done this for a reason. We still have 2 variables to figure out. We're now going to look at the position of the scope, which relates to your eye relief. The best way that we've found is by picking up your rifle, closing your eye, getting into your natural position and opening your eye. Now if you have a clear view down your scope, you know that the position of your scope is correct. If it's not, you need to move the scope forward or back to get a clear view. Now that we have the position of the scope right, we're going to level up our reticle, also known as a crosshair. Now this is very important, and there are many ways to do it, which we're going to show you in another video later. But for today's purposes, we're just going to show you a very basic way of doing it. I know that the rifle's square because it's sitting in this vise. You can get down and just twist the scope till it becomes square with my eye and what I think square. Now the reticle's nice and level, we're on to our final step. That's where we're going to torque up our screws in the top of our scope ring. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that you're doing it evenly, left and right. Once you've done that, you've mounted your scope and you're ready to go.